Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian. It's great having you with us. A case, when one looks at it, is born out of conspiracy. Those are the words of lead defense attorney Keith Knight QC as he presented closing arguments to the jury in the Shane Gibson bribery trial. The QC told the 8-women, 1-man jury that there is not one piece of evidence that shows that Gibson did one single thing, adding an injustice to anyone is an injustice to everyone. Mr. Knight suggested that if it weren't for corrupt behavior, Gibson would not be sitting in the court dock and he would walk out of the courtroom saying free at last. Multiple times Knight asked, "Where is Bastian? Why she didn't come here? Why isn't she here?" The defense attorney also went in on Assistant Superintendent of Police Deborah Thompson having a joint meeting with the key witness and editing Ash's statement. He then went on to say Ash gave conflicting testimony on the stand as he said he did not know Bastian. However, the defense counted 33 times Bastian and Ash had communicated and claimed he was introduced to Bastian by Permanent Secretary Jack Thompson. Knight reminded the jury that when Ash was on the stand, he said 136 times he could not recall, but could remember when he saw the check. Knight made the argument that no normal person would call someone general or boss, then give them money for political donations after being bribed by that person. Mr. Knight further told the jury it is not normal, therefore the jury cannot believe when Ash claimed he was bribed. Lead prosecutor James Guthrie charged that Ash was unable to recall due to being on the stand for over 6 days and being examined by the defense for most of those days. He added that it is understandable why Ash had to lie about Bastian being his aunt and why she refused to sign as she knew what she was doing was illegal. He argued that Ash had to be on good terms with Gibson as the bribes were working. As for the issue of the altered statement, Guthrie told the jury that Gibson knew what shingles meant by his interview when he was asked if he had asked Ash for any shingles. Instead of asking what he meant, Gibson answered no. Guthrie claimed the former cabinet minister used that term because it was dirty money Gibson wasn't supposed to have. He reminded the jury not to make assumptions over why Bastian wasn't called to the stand. The case continues tomorrow at 10 a.m., where the judge will give a summary of the evidence and arguments to the jury. Meantime, Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands coming to the government's defense when it comes to the Minister administration's new budget allocation, which increased its travel budget by $4 million post-Hurricane Dorian. This information revealed in a local daily section called Perspective, which also revealed that the fiscal strategy report outlined that more than $3 million has been allocated per diem. Dr. Sands alluded to the fact that the Minister administration is being open and transparent with the information, adding that he is proud of the government's record of freely producing information.
This is a totally different era. Now the information is there, the numbers are there, and now the discussion starts. That's when the fight starts. But how come you spend $10 for this and you didn't spend $5 for that? How come you spend $20 for this? I think this is the beauty of a democracy, that you are able to have an impassioned discussion about facts. The facts are there. We want to stand on our record. But I will say that if you looked at Odyssey immediately after Dorian, the helicopters were like mosquitoes. There were helicopters going back and forth to Abaco and Grand Bahama, delivering supplies, delivering personnel, allowing us to assess what was happening on the ground.
Despite the record-breaking flights traveling to both Grand Bahama and Abaco post-Dorian, the health minister noted that people still said enough wasn't done.
Those aircraft, while some of those flights were donated by NGOs, some of those flights had to be paid for. We evacuated some 200 persons with medical conditions. Most of that was provided by the U.S. Coast Guard, but some of it was provided by other carriers, and we had to pay for it. In order to get food, supplies, medication, staff, that had to be paid for in many instances. A lot of it, yes, donated, but some of it paid for. So the criticism is there on the basis of facts. And I'm pretty proud of our record that we have been able to produce the information as opposed to just allowing people to speculate on the basis of nothing.
Opposition leader Philip Davis has gone on record saying that he believes the government made the wrong decision to increase their travel budget, adding that the opposition's still waiting a report of the minister administration's travel expenses as promised on the campaign trail. In January 2018, Prime Minister Dr. Hewitt Minnis committed to disclosing ministers' travel costs. However, that has yet to happen. Progressive Liberal Party Deputy Leader Chester Cooper says Prime Minister Dr. Hewitt Minnis is late again on the issue of marijuana, particularly in light of Dr. Minnis' announcement this past Sunday that the government will reform the country's marijuana laws and potentially expunge records of those convicted on possession of small amounts of the drug. The PLP deputy says while he welcomes the Prime Minister's effort to reform the country's antiquated marijuana laws, the Prime Minister must do more than talk, as it is his duty to act on his convictions and lead, having publicly called in the House of Assembly for the legalization of medicinal marijuana and the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana in May, as well as urging the government in June to leap forward as a nation on the issue. Mr. Cooper says the government dithers awaiting a delayed report from the Marijuana Commission, adding that the Bahamians continue to suffer under a condemnable policy and statute approach. As far as Mr. Cooper is concerned, the Prime Minister should have already directed his Attorney General to draft the necessary legal reforms, and they should be brought to Parliament. Mr. Cooper says marijuana should be treated as a controlled substance and not a dangerous drug. However, the Exuma and Ragged Island MP says he is ready to debate the issue in the House of Assembly. He added that the country needs to move on from the punitive practice of denying those in need of medical treatment and end the persecution of those who are only interested in using marijuana for recreational and religious practice. Mr. Cooper suggested laws be passed to ensure people are not driving, piloting, working in the public service, or operating dangerous equipment under the influence of marijuana, as well as to be sure to protect minors from the influence of marijuana, as the case of it happening all too frequently. He further suggested the government engage in dialogue with international partners like the United States to sensitize them to the Bahamas' intentions and seek their cooperation in continuing to combat the illicit drug trade. Well, the health minister responding to opposition deputy leader who says the government should just decriminalize marijuana. This following the Prime Minister's statement that the records of those convicted for possession will be expunged. Well, to that, Dr. Sands says legislation isn't passed that way and reiterated that there is a process.
When I lick my finger and hold it up in the wind because the wind is blowing, and that's how policy is created, I guess, by the opposition. We have taken a path of looking at the data, determining what is appropriate and fit for the Bahamas. I believe that the Marijuana Commission has done an excellent bit of work. They are almost done with their preliminary report. Let them report, and then we'll action it. Why is this such an emergency now that it should be done today or tomorrow? I didn't hear the deputy leader of the opposition speaking about this 3 years ago.
Dr. Sands says the Marijuana Commission's report should be completed soon. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.